With us now is Joan Entmacher, who is Vice President for Family Economic Security at the National Women's Law Center, where she leads a team to improve policies important to the economic security of low-income women and their families. That includes tax and budget, child care, child support, and unemployment insurance, as well as assistance and Social Security. And they've been putting out a lot of great reports, as they always do, sometimes with tragic stories to tell, but always very important. So, Joan Entmacher, National Women's Law Center. First of all, correct me if I mispronounce your last name, Entmacher, I'm guessing, and thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks. I'm pleased to be here.
How'd I do on the name?
Perfect.
Thank you. Glad to hear it. With a name like mine, you sometimes get a little sensitive, and mine's completely phonetic, so I don't know what the problem is. But one of the things you wrote about recently, or rather, I should say that your group studied recently, is, and I think this is a really important issue. I've tried to make the point on this program a number of times that we always talk about private sector employment when when the newspapers cover it and employment issues and so on. But we've been, at the meantime, cutting public sector jobs at an unprecedented rate. And I believe a recent study of your groups showed that this is disproportionately affecting women.
Yes, it definitely is. I mean, women are a majority of public sector employees, particularly at the local level. Think about teachers and public health workers. And those jobs were hit very heavily, ironically, not during the recession as it's defined, but by government's failure to renew the Recovery Act, which had provided funding to states and localities so they didn't have to make cuts, and then that funding was ended, and state budgets were still in crisis, and they still haven't recovered. We are still down from where we were, and it's women who are bearing the brunt of those cuts.
And that would be because women are disproportionately in professions like, I'm guessing, like teaching and perhaps nursing and some other fields that might be
social work and
social work. Right.
And a lot of the administration of programs like unemployment insurance that are done at the state level, women are responsible for administering those programs, and they've been cut. And it's a blow not only to women who hold those jobs, but also to the women who are served, to the women who depend on sending their children to public schools, to receiving Medicaid benefits that are largely administered by women, who go to public health clinics where nurses and other health paraprofessionals work. So it's a blow both to the families who rely on those services and the women who hold them.
Well, and that's a very important point. So let's, just to look at the numbers a little bit from the report that the Law Center did. The economy added 217,000 jobs in May. Women, which, by the way, it's important to reiterate that while that sounds good and is good, we would be needing to add significantly more in order to offset for increases in the working age population and other shifts. So there's no reason to be. We need a lot more overall growth on the jobs area than we're seeing right now. But the economy added 217,000 jobs in May. But for women, it was 86,000, while men gained 131,000. And the women's job gains were disproportionately in low-wage sectors, leisure and hospitality and retail and so on. So, number one, we're seeing men benefit disproportionately from the jobs that are being created. Number two, we're seeing women who do get jobs get low-paying jobs. And number three, as you just pointed out, as a result of these budget cuts, there is also a declining set of services available, for example, to women who would categorize as lower income or working poor. So if we summarize that, it sounds like whatever the intentions behind some of these policy decisions, they're turning out to be anti-woman in effect.
They definitely are. I mean, women are, and I mean, clearly the policies are hurting men as well. Women are a particular concern because even before this recession, they were more likely to be poor. They have lower incomes when they're working, being the wage gap of 77 cents to the dollar hasn't moved in a decade. So I think one of the concerns is that women were vulnerable, and now things are getting even worse. But clearly the cuts in public funding has hurt men. We see it now with the inability to agree on replenishing the Highway Trust Fund. Those are a lot of construction jobs, fairly well-paying, probably would mostly go to men. And that would be important because although construction jobs have started to come back, there are still a lot of men who are looking for work, and Congress can't get that done either. So
well,
really
you guys also did a study.
Widespread.
Yeah, you guys also did a piece on construction jobs and the fact that those are disproportionately male and that women were working. Yeah, that's right. Understatement, right?
Yes, I'll say so. Less than 3% of construction jobs are held by women. That's where we were 30, 40 years ago.
Right, and the women who do take those jobs are subject to sometimes intense sexual harassment. Yeah. So, I guess the question is, two things, I guess, but one of them is, as we encourage, obviously we do want to repair our broken infrastructure and so on, and we do need construction jobs. Is there a policy answer that would say, for example, there has to be a set aside for women's jobs, as well as strict enforcement of protection against sexual harassment?
I think a set aside or goals that are really aggressively looked at, because one of the reasons that the sexual harassment is so rife is that there are so very few women. I mean, something the military discovered when women entered the military, which was another institution with not very welcoming attitudes at the beginning, but that it was key to have a significant number of women come in to provide some support, and obviously for the leadership of an organization to say this is not going to be tolerated, and employers and managers on the job sites need to be clear about their responsibilities. I mean, the interesting thing is and what our report showed is that there are women with the training and skills to do this work and the interest in doing it. It's not just that, women aren't interested. They are, but they get driven out by really appalling levels of harassment and abuse. And
it is horrifying. And I guess in the slightly less than a minute we have left, I would summarize by saying, okay, so we need to do something aggressive about getting women in construction jobs and protecting them, and perhaps to stop demonizing or minimizing the vital jobs of teachers and other people who work in the public sector, and going back to respecting the fact that a public sector job is a good job that does good work. Would you, in 30 seconds, you basically agree with that?
Totally. I mean, those are the jobs: educating our children, providing health care for everyone, providing parks and recreation for people who don't have the money to fly off to distant places, but have to use our public transit and use our public parks and use our public schools. That's the vast majority of us, and that's what our public employees do.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks so much for your terrific work at the National Women's Law Center. We'll keep following, and we'll keep asking you for guidance on this. Joan Entmacher, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, RJ.
You bet. I'm RJ Eskow, and we will be right back after this. This is The Zero Hour.